As an East Asian woman and a person of color living in a foreign country, I've borne an immense amount of unearned anger from other people. That anger is actually about entirely different, much bigger issues, like their deep-seated frustration with systemic unfairness or the unethical practices of massive corporations. But instead of doing something meaningful about it, like becoming an activist, joining a protest, or simply doing the healing work for themselves, these cowards choose a different route. They pour their anger, their resentment, and their helplessness onto women or more disadvantaged groups. And some of them specifically target East Asian women, who are perceived as less likely to retaliate and who belong to cultures that condition them to be quieter, more subdued, and to always minimize the intensity of everything, whether that means de-escalating a conflict they didn't even start, or toning down moments of pure, vibrant happiness. I started studying psychology 20 years ago, and I am proud to be among those who are capable of stopping the vicious cycle of anger dumping. When the world dumps its fire on me, I don't pass it on. I analyze. I understand. I journal. I go to nature. I heal. What Buddhism calls sati and upekkha, meaning mindful awareness and equanimity under fire, are not soft or passive states. They're hard-won skills. I once delivered a teaching session filled with happiness right after surviving a physical assault. I even started this channel because here's the raw reality of human behavior. Every single piece of anger that a person feels completely helpless to change eventually becomes a chip on their shoulder, and sooner or later, one or more innocent people ends up bearing the weight of that chip. Now, you may be wondering, well, you must have done something to poke them or set them off. I can tell you with absolute certainty, these people don't need you to do a single thing to trigger their venting. It can take just one single line, even a deeply caring one. For example, you walk up and say, "You look tired." Hearing an angry, snapped, "I'm fine," is actually the best case scenario. What's worse is when they start slamming objects, dropping things, or escalating straight into physical violence. What we're witnessing is a hyperactive threat detection system, consistent with research on chronically dysregulated nervous systems, where neutral or even positive stimuli are misread as threatening because their internal alarm is permanently set too high. Even warmth can register as danger. Some of these individuals weaponize protective language, contaminating positive words and intentions with their sophistry and unreasonable nonsense. They sabotage mundane conversations about the most trivial things in life, making it impossible to even have a basic interaction, not to mention the deep, meaningful, or intellectual discussions that human spirits need. Some of these angry people vent when they learn you have a different opinion. How dare you disagree with me? Even worse, some wouldn't even allow you to have an opinion. How dare you have an opinion? With every anger outburst, they burn a bridge to meaningful connection. True bonding requires us to be open, friendly, and respectful of differing opinions, and to accept the simple reality that people have a natural right to think differently. So why are these people so completely on edge all the time? The reason is a complex mix of psychological, neurological, cultural, characterological factors, including the core beliefs, attitudes, and habits of entitlement that drive the behavior. From a psychological perspective, some perpetrators' fragile egos demand that they constantly maintain status, while their underlying fear or insecurity drives an obsession to keep everyone and everything under rigid control. From a clinical and neurological perspective, this aggressive venting could be the direct result of a massive backlog of unprocessed emotions, years or even decades of accumulated anger, bitterness, sadness, disappointment, and chronic resentment. Their nervous systems have been chronically dysregulated over a lifetime. Because their emotional baseline is already sitting at a boiling point, they suffer from an extremely low threshold for frustration. Pop science says it well. Some perpetrators' survival brains stretch everything out of proportion. They exaggerate every minor friction and weaponize language to justify their sudden, aggressive outbursts. They create a chaotic storm outside just to match the chaotic storm raging inside their own skin. Shame also plays a massive role here, driving a profound aversion to any form of emotional exposure. It explains why they aggressively push away loving and caring gestures, the very things they secretly crave but are completely unable to handle. Building genuine bonds of love requires vulnerability, and their deep-seated shame simply won't allow them to expose themselves. The fifth video on this channel tackles shame and rage. Check it out if you're interested. Beyond emotional overload and shame, there are other toxic fuels at play, specifically the perpetrator's deeply ingrained attitudes, beliefs, and habits of entitlement toward their targets. As Lundy Bancroft, a decades-long counselor for abusive men and the author of Why Does He Do That, points out, their behavior isn't just about a lack of emotional control. It's driven by a core belief that they have the right to use you as their psychological punching bag. Buddhist psychology has a name for this too, lobha, the greed for control, tangled up with moha, the stubborn delusion that overpowering someone else will finally quiet the storm inside. It never does. The suffering just changes address. In my next video, I'll introduce some useful tools for both perpetrators and those on the receiving end. If you find this useful, hit like and subscribe. It'll encourage me to bring more value to you.